and introduce our panelists before we jump into questions. And then if they even want to say a sentence or two about themselves before we get started on questions, we would welcome that as well. So Alex Jimenez is joining us where he started his career at AT&T, focused predominantly on B2B marketing solutions. And after a bit of time, he changed industries and found his home in education, working for Universal Technical Institute. Dedicated 12 years of service where he was promoted 4 times until he became the regional director of admissions for UTI, overseeing 4 schools and their recruitment teams. Alex felt his growth within the organization reached a limit and made the decision to venture down a new path into the world of finance. And he's now working for New York Life Insurance Company and uses his extensive recruitment background to identify talent and build a powerful team of financial advisors to serve Houston residents. We also have Nicole Kaupishman, I believe. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nicole. And Nicole is the VP of Human Resources and Marketing for Citizens State Bank in Cadott, Wisconsin. And she is entrusted with setting the strategic path for the bank's greatest asset, its people. Nicole has about 10 years of professional HR and sales experience and previously has worked in progressive human resources roles in manufacturing and then led a team in staffing and recruitment for a variety of industries. And then before WGU, Nicole obtained her Bachelor of Science degree in marketing from the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. And when she was at WGU, she obtained her MBA in 2019, lives in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and her husband, Pat, and their Italian Greyhound mixed dog Cookie. They all live there together. Nicole enjoys spending time with her family and friends and reading in her free time. And then finally, we also have Kelly. Kelly's class of 2019, Bachelor's of Science in HR Management, and began her career working with startup companies doing HR and office management. During this time, she spent 5 years as a consultant for clients across the world, where she was able to use her business experience and her degree in cross-cultural studies to help businesses thrive while managing people from diverse backgrounds. In 2017, Kelly decided to focus her career by pursuing a degree in accounting at WGU, but quickly realized that was not the path for her. She then transferred to HR and knew she had found a career home. In April 2019, Kelly graduated and began her current position as HR generalist at Allworth Financial in California. I believe that's Sacramento. And has used her experience working with startups to help build HR systems and processes that have supported the company in doubling its employee count since she joined, which is impressive. So we're very thankful to have these 3 wonderful alum join us, and we'll jump right into it. I have probably 5 or 6 questions, and then any questions that attendees have, please go ahead and put those in the chat, and we'll get to those throughout the event. So for this first question, I'm wondering if you could share your thoughts on what are the major trends that are impacting recruiting and talent acquisition today. And why don't we start with Nicole?
Definitely, thank you. When I think of the major trends impacting recruiting and talent acquisition, I really thought of it from like the employer standpoint. So what are we dealing with when we're trying to obtain talent, when we're looking for talent, and who kind of is out in the marketplace? And the biggest thing that came to mind for me, especially in my region, which would be the Midwest region, is competition. It is a hot job market right now. And when it's a hot job market as an employer, we have to really start thinking about, pay, work conditions, benefits, the purpose of our work, the involvement of our people. Another thing that came to mind for me were generations. We just started to feel like we were working well with millennials, and then Gen Z entered the workforce. So that's another trend that's changing up recruiting and talent acquisition. And then technology. And this is probably where it starts to cross over into job seekers or people who are looking for jobs, is we have to get really creative with recruiting and talent acquisition, because people want to be on their mobile phone. They want to be able to text. They want to be able to get information back in a minute. It's all about like that instant reaction. And so we've really learned, especially for more of our entry level roles, that we have to get creative to get to our candidates and have to allow our candidates to interact with us quicker to obtain them. It's a little bit different, obviously, as you go up in the maybe skill level or level of the position. So it's, different as we go into our more technical roles, our management roles, our executive roles, et cetera. But that's really what I've seen is, from an employer standpoint, it's how do we get competitive and how do we lead the pack, and how do we work with who's out in the market, because every generation is available to work right now, it feels like. And then technology. That's what I came up with for you guys.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nicole. Alex or Kelly, any thoughts?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I'll let you go, Alex.
Kelly, you go first. Go ahead.
Okay, so I would definitely agree with what Nicole said. I think that that's really helpful. A couple of other things that I've noticed for us, and this may be industry specific, it may not be, but I have seen a lot more kind of fits and starts with things. So we may have positions that are posted, and I have found this talking with other HR professionals in my area as well. And then because we are in the middle of this pandemic, things just change so quickly. And so it may be that I can be in the middle of talking with a candidate about a position, and then later that day find out that actually we're going to need to put that one on hold for a while. And so there's just a greater amount of flexibility needed, both from us as recruiters and HR professionals, but then also from the candidates, understanding that this is a time where businesses are really trying to figure out how to take care of the employees that they already have, how to stay afloat with what they're doing, and then also try to continue looking at future growth, but knowing that they're doing it in an environment that is just constantly changing.
For me, guys, I would say that trying not to repeat anything that both Kelly and Nicole have already said, because those, I guess those features are parallel in our industry too. But I look at this from a perspective of a recruiter, right? And I look at my industry, and I know my industry is very finicky and it's not for everyone. So I'm always curious as to why would anybody in the world want to apply to be in financial services, right? So then I come to realize that one of the major challenges I'm facing today is that it's super easy to apply for jobs. So what ends up happening is that I have people that are apply for 30 jobs at the same time, and I happen to be one of them. So what I find is that when I'm reaching out to the candidate, a lot of the times the candidate doesn't even know that they applied for the job. And it is just absolutely disheartening, because if I was in technology and I applied to work for Google, and somebody calls me and in the first 5 seconds they're like, "Hi, my name's Alex, I'm calling you from Google," I mean, I'm going to throw myself off the chair, because it's the call I've been waiting for. So to me, just the fact that it's so easy to apply for so many jobs at the same time, I would just exercise caution for the recruiters, and I would also exercise caution for the job candidate too. Make sure you know what you're applying for.
I have a question for you, Michael, because I noticed that all of us are in the finance industry. My company also does financial advising, and so I'm curious if you did that on purpose or if that was a happy accident. I think either way, we're a great industry to be in, but I was curious when you were introducing all of us.
Yes, yeah, interesting point. So as I was finding or seeking panelists for the event, really focused for our business students and recent alum, looking for recruiters and those in HR within business as a whole, as a wider industry. And you all happen to be in finance, banking, which was just kind of an irony, less of a planned thing. Yeah.
It worked out well. So I wasn't trying to call you out on that. I was just curious.
Yeah, no, that's, call me out all you want. Completely fine with that. Thank you for that insight. That's really interesting across the board, the different things that you're all observing, both just from your own kind of perspective as an organization, as well as how candidates are interacting with organizations. That's fascinating. So Kelly, I'm wondering if we could start with you on this next question. What are the key competencies and skills expected of candidates today?
Yeah, for us, a couple of them, or a couple of the key competencies that I jotted down thinking about this question. First, of course, is technology. If I'm talking to somebody and we've scheduled a Zoom meeting and they can't figure out how to get into Zoom, that's already a problem because we're so reliant on technology that the kind of base level has gone from, knowing how to type and open up a Word document to now knowing how to learn new technologies, new pieces. I think that is really number one that I'm seeing as a key competency across the board. Another one is that adaptability, going back to thinking of how things are changing so quickly. We really need candidates who are adaptable and who can, whether that's, okay, I can wait a few weeks until I hear back from you, or I can figure out how to go from working in the office where my coworkers are right next door, I can get up and go talk to them, to now I'm working from home and I've got to figure out how to use all these, again, pieces of technology to do that. And the third one that I jotted down was proactivity, just having that kind of proactive mindset and philosophy in work. I think that especially for business students, that one is a non-negotiable. Businesses are not looking for people who just, check off the list that they've been handed, but they're looking for the people who can create the list, figure out how to solve the problem, and actually, go out and do that even before they're asked to do so.
Nicole or Alex, any thoughts?
Alex, if it's all right with you, I'll jump in first.
Sure.
Thank you. So I thought a lot about this, and you could look at any industry and you could say key competencies are going to be, those technical skills, these educational skills, et cetera. And while those are all super important, and I won't push those to the side, I had a couple things come up the other day at work, and it really made me think about this. And when I was breaking it down, I said, anyone coming into an organization, whether you're a new grad or you're coming into a new role in the organization or you're trying to advance in the organization, it really comes down to attitude and willingness are going to be huge. Communication. We struggle with communication so much, from simple things like writing narratives to professional emails, things like that. And it's anywhere from our entry level all the way up through our organization. So just remembering some of those like basic things you learned in, your composition classes, et cetera. Professionalism, huge. How do you interact with people appropriately? How do you handle situations appropriately? Engagement in your work. How do you show that you're interested and engaged? And then one thing I really thought about for myself too, as I was coming out of college, information changes so quickly today. What you maybe learned in your freshman year of college is maybe not even relevant by the time you graduate. And so how do you have that ability to find or learn information quickly, decipher it, and then put it into use? Because you're going to be in a constant state of learning if you're in an industry that's growing, changing. So while technical, educational, super important, yes, I will never downgrade that. It's some of those base competencies that I think are going to give you a leg up when you're entering the job market. If you can communicate well, have that professionalism, find information, it's just going to put you above and beyond your peers. That's my 2 cents.
Perfect. I guess just to add to that, I think my organization's been around 175 years already, and I think we have a pretty good grasp on the qualities, right, that you need to possess in order to be successful here. So I've already nailed and narrowed this down to, I'm looking for 3 kinds of people or 3 different qualities on resumes. I'm looking for either academic achievers, which are all of us on this call today, right? I'm looking for entrepreneurs, or I'm looking for leaders, right? Leaders are usually people that get promoted over and over again. So I have this right in front of me. I know this person is capable of doing the job, and I know as an organization we can bridge the gap as far as training is concerned. I have no doubt about that. But in my questions, I'm digging to find out who you really are. And the number one thing I'm looking for is that you have a passion to help people. Because if you don't have a passion to help people, and I don't feel that sincerity from you, I don't care how technologically, amazing you are or how adaptable you are. I mean, we're in the people business. I also want to make sure through my questioning that you have a certain level of grit, because this is not easy and it's not for everyone. And there are ups and downs, especially in finance. And I want to make sure that you're capable of weathering it. Being that we're also very, very highly regulated, I'm looking to make sure that you understand that integrity is important, right? That you're going to do the right thing, whether anybody's watching you or not. I want to see that you have an attitude for success, that you have some enthusiasm, right? That you have a sense of self-discipline, because I don't want to have to remind you that you have a family to feed. And I know that everyone here at WGU has self-discipline. I want to make sure that you're resilient, that you're goal-oriented, and more importantly, that you're coachable, right? Because you have to be able to take constructive feedback, and you can hear that as a recruiter. You understand if you're talking to a victor or a victim, and we're looking for victors, right? Just people that are running to something, not running away from something. So what you say is very important. So these are all things that stand out above and beyond your resume.
Yeah, very interesting. I saw some themes there throughout your answers, especially around soft skills, or kind of even being rebranded right now as like power skills. These are the things that help get you promoted. They move you forward in your career. They really give you the kind of superpowers to thrive in your roles and the work that you do. And you may be familiar with NACE, working in HR. NACE is the National Association of Colleges and Employers, and they list some core competencies for college students and recent alumni. And those are good critical thinking and problem solving, like was mentioned, oral and written communications, teamwork, collaboration, digital technology, leadership, professionalism, work ethic, career management, how you identify and articulate your skills and manage your career, and then global and intercultural fluency. And so you touched on a lot of those things, and when employers have been surveyed on the competencies that they're looking for, that they're seeking, versus those that they're seeing in candidates, there seems to be a lot of desire for soft skills, but that those don't tend to be the top strengths that they're seeing from candidates. So I thought it was really interesting that you all touched on soft skills. So as a couple of you have already mentioned, and I guess you have to kind of be living under a rock right now to not know what's been going on since the beginning of the year with the pandemic. I mean, it's really affected the entire world of work. What are some key strategies that candidates can be using right now in their job search, whether they're actively or passively searching? What are some of those tools or strategies that could be used today, given the pandemic that's going on? And Alex, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Well, guys and girls, right? I guess being that I am from Houston, Texas, about 3 years ago, I mean, we had a pretty major hurricane come through here called Harvey. And Harvey pretty much destroyed Houston, and there was a lot of flooding everywhere. And I think what we learned from Harvey is, what areas around Houston are more likely to flood and which areas are not likely to flood. So that kind of changed the real estate game. So as you apply that to what we're living through today, I think through this pandemic, we have realized a whole new term, right? Which is which businesses and industries are considered to be essential, right? And in the world where so many people were laid off and unemployment is at about 8.4%, you have to think about who are those people that are still working, right? So I would say a key strategy is identify the industries and the businesses that are still employed. And despite a global pandemic, you're still operating, right? So I'd start there because that expresses some longevity. Number two, I would take the time to understand the science behind how recruiters even get a hold of your resume. You have to understand that before the resume gets to us, it goes through an applicant tracking system. And it's not a computer reading your resume, it's a computer looking for keywords. So if you're looking for a specific role, just make sure that you understand like search engine optimization and that your resume is tailored to make sure that we find it. But then number three, holy cow, like don't be afraid to be a go-getter. Like if you want to work for New York Life, research who is the hiring manager at New York Life, find them on LinkedIn, connect on LinkedIn, engage in conversation on LinkedIn, and chances are that I may even take your resume through LinkedIn, or I may encourage you to go and apply. I'll send you the direct link and just bypass everybody. But more importantly, right, I think a key strategy too is understanding how in a world where everyone has a bachelor's degree, in a world where everyone has a master's degree, and it's so competitive out there, everyone's bilingual these days, right? You got to learn how to sell yourself. And I think understanding how to sell yourself is a skill set in itself. Selling is a transfer of emotion. So that basically means that, we're on a Zoom meeting and you're going to try and do what I'm doing, which is on purpose. I'm trying to smile as much as I can because I want to appear to be friendly, right? I want to make sure my attire is on point, right? I don't want to make sure that I'm not wearing a baseball cap and whatnot. So selling yourself once you've got that opportunity is going to be extremely important because most interviews are taking place over Zoom these days. And you have to impress and you have to smile and you have to make people like you and transfer that emotion, right? So those are 4 things. That's what I got for you guys.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it. Kelly or Nicole, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in here. I think that what Alex said is really helpful. The kind of science behind how applicant tracking systems look at resumes is really important. That also kind of goes into, though, the size of the company. So there are smaller companies, and this is really knowing your audience, right? There are smaller companies who are not using those more robust tools, and they are, they have individual eyes on every resume that comes through. And so there's also that element of, if you know that you're applying to that smaller company, you can make yourself stand out with just a really simple objective statement at the top of your resume that doesn't just say, oh, I want to use my skills at your company to make you guys better, but that says, I'm a leader in the HR industry. I have cross-cultural experience that I can apply to your company. I have experience working with startups that I can apply as your company wants to grow. So whatever it is that's unique to you, highlighting that at the very top of your resume, because in that split second that those eyes are first on your resume, that is what they're going to see. So that's something that I really recommend just whenever I'm talking to people individually about their job search. Don't discount the importance of that really simple statement at the top. And then I love the follow-up on LinkedIn. I have people whose resumes I probably wouldn't have seen had they not connected with me on LinkedIn. And some of those people are in my pipeline now for potential future jobs. And some of those people are associates with Allworth Financial because they took that extra, 3 minutes, 5 minutes to find me and connect with me. And that helped me to see they are the go-getter. They are, proactive in what they're doing. And I would love to hear, Nicole, I was not, hopefully didn't cut you off there, but would love to hear your take too.
Definitely. I just have to say second to everything Alex and Kelly said, because all accurate and all very applicable. The piece that I probably love the most about what's already been mentioned is sell yourself, right? In the recruitment process, it's all about showing how you're the best candidate for that company. I think back to simple strategies, and I think even in COVID, they're very possible and very doable, but networking, get to know people, leverage your personal network, Tell people you're looking for work. Tell people what you're looking for. Tell them why you're looking. Let them share your story. And then instead of just you looking for a job, you have your mom, your dad, your cousins, your friends, your professors. You have your whole network engaged, and it will produce leads. They may not always be the lead that you want, but at least it gets things moving. The other thing that I always think of, or always stop and pause, is when I get an actual like mailed resume. We're on Indeed, we have our ATS, we're on LinkedIn, and my networks are flooded, right? Like Michael had mentioned in my bio, I worked in staffing, so I have 5,000 connections on LinkedIn, right? But when somebody stops and mails me something addressed to Nicole Kapusman, I stop and I'm like, oh, look at this resume, right? So I do a double take. If somebody walks in a resume, if somebody calls me and says, hey, I just wanted to introduce myself, I applied on Indeed. Again, we're a smaller company, so I'm not dealing with, thousands of applications for a position, but that's what always stands out to me. And so it's, how do you put yourself out there? How do you sell yourself? How do you make yourself known in the recruitment game so that your name comes up before anyone else's? So Kelly and Alex, loved your responses, and I say second to everything.
I will add one thing that I just thought of, and actually it touches on something that Alex said earlier. And so once you actually have that first interview scheduled, whether that is a phone screening or an actual interview, do some research on the company, because I know my first question to every single applicant is, tell me what you know about Allworth Financial, and I'll go from there with what I share with you, right? Like that's number one every single time, exactly how I start. And I want to know that the applicant has at least taken the time to look and see who this company is. They don't have to understand it all. They don't have to have a bunch of details, but I want to know that they did something. If my applicant says, oh, I don't even remember applying for this job, or I don't know, you didn't send me any information, which are both responses that I've received. It's really hard as a recruiter to get beyond that when I know I'm looking for people who are proactive. That just says, wow, this person doesn't actually care, and are they going to care when they're in the position? So that may sound super basic for some of you who have done a little bit of research already, but it's also really important that you do, as you're going through this, that you do some research on the company, at least on a basic level.
Yeah, these are fantastic recommendations and suggestions. I wholeheartedly agree with everything that's been said, and these are the same things that we're telling students and advising appointments, especially about selling yourself and networking. I think that they're often overlooked as people kind of have a pray and spray method when it comes to job searching, of applying. As we got back to Alex's earlier comment about applying for 30, 40, 50 positions at the same company, and then hoping something works out. I did have one more question. However, we're getting a lot of really great questions, so I do want to pivot, because I know we only have 30 minutes left to get some of those questions answered. Our first question here for the panelists, and anyone who wants to jump in here, feel free to. What can be done? What can be done to help those who are older and more experienced, as we are competing with the younger, less expensive and less experienced candidates? So I think the question being, not necessarily what can be, what help, but what strategies or what can individuals do who may be older and more experienced and competing in this market?
So I'll be happy to jump in here. This is something that I get a lot, actually. We have a lot of positions that we post for, that 4 to 6 years of experience level. And I can say in HR, we tend to post that for a specific reason. We want people to be able to come into a position and grow. However, we I know for me, and I'm going to guess for my other panelists and other HR professionals, we're really open to those applicants who maybe have a lot more experience, but who are still willing and wanting to come in at the level that we're posting. So not even that we want you to come in, at a cheaper rate or something like that, but that for you, what's important and what can be communicated is that your title isn't your number one goal, right? You are whatever it is that you're actually looking for. Spell that out for the recruiter, spell it out for the hiring manager so that you want to give them that image of you being in that position. Rather than framing it as, well, try to pick me over this, less experienced and more cost effective, which may not be candidate. So regardless of what you think your disadvantage might be, your job in selling yourself is help plant that vision in the interviewer's mind for you filling it.
I would agree, Kelly. I think you hit it spot on. It's sell yourself. What do you bring to the company? I can speak from experience too. I'm not always looking for the cheapest option because the cheapest option doesn't always bring me the best return, right? So I'm willing to pay for my position. So my one maybe caveat would be do your research, find out what the average salary or pay rate is, and then know that if you're pursuing a job like that, that's usually going to be the equivalent pay. So if the equivalent pay is 50,000, but you want to make 100,000, maybe you have to reevaluate if that's the position for you. So I think just being cognizant about the market data out there helps you understand what you're walking into as well. So you maybe don't feel like there's a discrepancy there. And sometimes it's just having the conversation with the recruiter or with the HR person that's involved in the interviews and kind of expressing, hey, here's, my thoughts. Can you tell me a little bit more about the pay rates, the position, the qualifications, et cetera?
Guys, I just to add to that and try not, first of all, second to everything that Nicole and Kelly have said, that's spot on. But I would also caution you to not believe the things that you tell yourself. I don't know how old you are when you apply. Unless you're putting your age on your resume. What I'm looking for, as I stated before, are all those key attributes that you possess. And sometimes, you may be an incredibly attractive candidate, just because of all the experiences and the attributes that you bring to the table. And it has absolutely nothing to do with your age. And then we've all taken HR courses at WGU, and we understand that there's no organization out there today that's going to be discriminating against race or age or against cultural background. And then not in today's world. So I think just be careful with what you tell yourself, because if you think you can, then you will. And if you think you can't, then you won't. And if you think that your age is going to be a hindrance, then guess what? It is going to be a hindrance, because that's the energy you're going to bring to that interview. I'm just here to hire the best. I don't care what you look like, what age you have, or any of those things. To me, that's irrelevant. I just want to hire the best person for the job. So it just caution with what you believe. All right.
Yeah, wonderful points across the board. I think that's great advice. And Alex, I really like what you got to at the end, which is a topic that we've been addressing through some webinars, is imposter syndrome. And really about like those negative things that you tell yourself that can really dictate and set up kind of and frame your perspective. And so I think that that's a really important thing for people to hear, not just older candidates, but anyone who's maybe experiencing some setbacks or is running into some barriers. I think that's really great advice. So we're getting lots of questions about resumes. So I thought I'd ask one of those questions that's come through. In regards to crafting your resume and cover letter, and I'll let any of you chime in there about cover letter specifically, what are some tips to make myself stand out? Or what are some of the common mistakes that might set off red flags? Do you read cover letters? So love to know your thoughts on that.
I'll jump in first if that's all right. Do I read cover letters? Yes. Do I get them all the time? No. So if you have one, it really stands out. I wouldn't say if you're turning in a 2-page cover letter to me that I'm going to read it in great detail. But if you have a cover letter that is in the proper format and has, 3 good paragraphs, I'm going to read that cover letter. And if you hook me in that first paragraph, you're really going to have my attention. An example I have is I was hiring for a teller, right? An entry-level position. Don't get many cover letters for my teller positions. And I actually had a college grad applying, and her first sentence in her cover letter was, "I'm a customer of your bank." So first I was hooked, right? I'm like, hey, a customer's writing to me. That's important to us. And then she went on to explain that she had obtained her degree. She's looking for a foot in the door in the financial industry, et cetera, et cetera. So I would say, yeah, hook someone with your cover letter, make it easy to read. Don't make it, super long. So you have to take a couple minutes out of your day to read it. Just hook them, give them the key information. Again, sell yourself. That's the point of your cover letter, right? And then for resumes, I like simplicity. I want to look at your resume. I want a quick snapshot of who you are. I want to know what your high level skills are. And that's going to tell me whether or not I want to proceed. My 2 cents. I'd love to hear what Kelly and Alex have to share.
Guys, I think your answer was spot on. Again, I would tell you that it all really just depends on the recruiter too, right? I would tell you that I guess I'm so grateful for all the opportunities that I've received in my life, and that there were people that took an opportunity on me. Everybody's new to an industry, and everybody gets promoted for the first time, and it's always someone that's giving you that opportunity to do so. So at least my personal philosophy when I'm looking at your resume is, all right, let's go through some basic things here, right? Like, let's make sure you spelled everything. Let's make sure your phone number's on there, right? Let's make sure you have a good email. Let's make sure that if my posting says I need a bachelor's degree or I need a master's degree, that, hey, lead with that. I want to know that you're qualified, and I want to know that you're capable. And then everything else, I'd rather simply have a conversation with you, to see if you have what it takes to be successful. I mean, I know on paper it says you do, but I want to talk to you. So I would just have to tell you that, take care of the basic block and tackle. If I was looking at your resumes, because your resume is good enough to get through the applicant tracking system. So at that point on, just come to the interview with confidence.
I think those are great. I am totally on board with both of those. I think a few other just kind of practical strategies that you can use are, put something in bold. If you have your cover letter, which I highly recommend that you provide one, as long as there's a place to do so, put a couple of sentences in bold. I'm a great fit for this position because I have X, Y, and Z skills. Put it in bold, make that your first or second sentence. I think that's a great one to use. I already mentioned, having a statement at the top of your resume, but any of those just little visual things that you can use to help something pop out. If you know they're looking for somebody who has a really specific set of experience, highlight that on your resume or highlight that in the cover letter. But otherwise, I totally am on board with everything Nicole and Alex said.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for those pieces of advice. They're wonderful. We're getting lots of wonderful questions here. We're probably not going to be able to cover them all, everyone. I'm so sorry, but there's a couple interesting ones, and wanted to get your thoughts. This goes towards career management. With unemployment rates at an all-time high and many industries dealing with uncertainty, how do you recommend upskilling or reskilling other than going to get an excessive amount of degrees to bridge the gap in resumes due to economic uncertainty? Should we be volunteering or doing industry certifications? Are there other recommendations?
I think those are all really good ideas that the person who wrote the question posed already. If somebody can't, if you're not working right now, Finances may be an issue, so getting another degree or another certification may not be an option for you right now. So volunteering is a great way to use the skills that you have as well as gain new ones, and it looks great on your resume. You know, that's something that if I see somebody maybe isn't working but they are volunteering, then that kind of catches my eye. I do think that certifications are great where needed, but they certainly don't solve all of your problems with that. So if you are currently employed, I would say really go to your employer, whether that's your current manager, supervisor, or somebody else within the company who you work closely with, and find out, you know, what else can you be doing? What is that new skill that you want to learn? And then put yourself in the path of that skill so that you can learn it. I'm sure there's lots of other ways, but I always like to think kind of like creative and super practical. So I'm going to leave that as my answer.
Nicole or Alex, looks like you both unmuted. Maybe you have some things to say.
Go ahead, Nicole.
All right, I'll jump in. I agree completely. The one thing I would add is if you're currently employed, like Kelly said, go to your employer and even share with your employer, what do you want to do? Do they know what your career goals are? Do they know what you're going to school for? Does your manager know what you want to get your hands involved in? We're huge about bringing our employees forward. So for example, we had a teller who graduated with her accounting degree. She now works in our accounting department part-time and tellers part-time. So it's all about does your employer know what you want? And that's a great path forward. Otherwise, volunteering, certifications, if you can do projects for work, if there's anything from school that you can do, anything to just pad and build your resume through experience, and then being able to talk about that and share what you learned and what that experience brought to you, that's where I think the value comes in.
Guys, I think the only thing that I could add is probably going to be more at a personal level, which is probably all the reason why we all came back to school as young adults or my age or whatever, right? But I think that it's a matter of understanding that success leaves clues, right? You really got to think about and soul search a little bit as to what is it you want to be, how do you measure success? Because if success is titles, then hey, you know, find the job that's going to give you tremendous amounts of titles. If success means money to you, then find the industries that pay. You know, if success means it's just you're helping people all day, then I mean, you could be as successful as you can be without ever needing these titles. But I'm telling you, success leaves clues. So I would say study the people you want to become and emulate that, right? I would also tell you too that I heard this at a very young age in my life, and I took it to heart because I saw very many successful people out there that didn't even have a college degree. And what I learned is that readers are leaders, right? Readers are leaders. So I came across a book while I was going through WGU, not because WGU told me to do it, but it's simply because I always understood that readers were leaders. And it's a book called Reinventing You. And it's by the I think it's Harvard. Yeah, it's actually by Harvard. And this particular book just simply talked about you are a brand. And if somebody ever said Alex is on the job, you know, what does that really mean, right? It means all these things that encompass me. So I would tell you one thing that stuck with me, and I'll be quiet, is that you can't build a reputation on what you say you're going to do. You have to do it. And I promise you, you will never, ever, ever have to apply to get a promotion. You will just get promoted because you've already been exemplary in the fact that you're capable and willing to do the work. So, guys, I just think that, you know, that it all starts here. It all starts from within. And so figure out what you want to be and become it.
Yeah, wonderful stuff. Yeah, Reinventing You is the name of the book that Alex mentioned, and I think the subtitle has something to do with like developing your personal brand. And so it really aligns with what Alex was just talking about. And I will second what Alex said too about readers are leaders. If you follow like Bill Gates, or some other famous people out there. They'll release their like books of the year. Look to those types of people who are well thought of in their industries or have had success. They're always making recommendations, Obama, books that they've read. So great suggestions all around. I have kind of two competing two questions that are kind of on the flip end, and so I thought maybe we could address kind of both at the same time. So one is, what are some ways that you can stand out to recruiters when you haven't graduated, say with like a BA or BS, and you're applying for a position that requires experience in that field and a degree? You don't have all of the experience yet or the degree, and then somebody on the flip side is, with 30 plus years of experience at the VP level, a lot of certifications, and now an MBA, stands to reason that higher the position, the fewer the opportunities. So what is the best way to find these opportunities? Is it through executive recruiters, networking, cold calling? So kind of both sides of the coin. What are your thoughts for entry level versus very experienced?
I think I'll just take a logical approach to this. I would say if you're applying for a job that you don't meet the qualifications for at an entry point, then go in through the back door, which basically means look for an opportunity to get into the company, and then just through hard work and determination, work your way up. We've all heard that story before. And number two, if you've been a higher level executive and you're looking for opportunities of that nature, I would definitely employ a professional headhunter that will get paid to place you in a job. So usually professional headhunters are going to have a large network. They have employers. They have, let's just say, a profile of the kind of candidate that they're looking for, and they'll help you penetrate through those walls that are hard to climb. That's my thought.
I would agree with Alex completely. Coming from the staffing world myself, it is a totally different world when you're placing entry level versus executive. Executive is very much a concierge service. It's working for that person, and no hiding nothing. We get paid a lot to place executives versus less to place entry level. And so there was definitely a different service level, a different expectation between the candidate and the staffing partner, and they are great resources. They know the industry, they're read into the industry leaders, and they know how to sell you, which is essentially what we've been talking about this whole time. Thinking on Alex's last point, though, about really focusing on you and what you've done, and how he had kind of mentioned too, going another route to get into a company. I think that speaks to what we've been talking about tonight too, is how do you leverage your network and who you know and what you've done to work to help you in those career paths. If you are an executive at a company and you have a list of projects and achievements and things that you've done, odds are people know you in your industry and in your market. So leverage that. Make a personal phone call, send the letter, stop in and visit with somebody, find different ways. Entry level, it's a little more unique because if you're going to, go through the ATS and it requires a bachelor's degree, you may get kicked out of the keyword search or the requirements. But same thing, make a call, leverage your network, find someone you know at the company, get out on LinkedIn. I think there's a lot of creative ways to get out there. And it's all about how do you sell yourself? Just like you would sell a product, think of it the same way.
Wonderful. Kelly, do you have any thoughts or?
So the only other one that I would add to that is in terms of networking, whether it's if you want to get into the human resources field and maybe you haven't been in that before, find out if there's a local HR chapter and start getting involved there. If it's becoming a financial advisor, if it's, whatever it is that you want to be getting into that maybe you feel like there's a roadblock, I think one of the most effective ways that you can kind of get beyond that is through networking. And so just finding if it's not somebody in your current network, how can you get into an existing network?
Wonderful. Yeah. I think networking is key, and maintaining those connections that you have. throughout the entirety of your career, not just for periods of time that you have those strong connections, but that means doing the work in the off time to maintain those connections so that they truly remain connections and can be helpful. A question that's come up a little bit in the chat, in the Q&A, is about resumes, length. Does length equals age? So kind of combining a couple questions, what would be the appropriate length? Is it the standard 1 page that so many people hear? When is it appropriate to do 2 pages? And should you leave off a lot of your experience to prevent looking like an over-hire in this tight job market? And anyone can start if they have some thoughts.
I'm going to guess we all have thoughts on this. For me, I would say no more than 2 pages in terms of length. You don't have to put every single job you've ever done on your resume. You can keep it down to the relevant jobs. You can keep it down to jobs from the past 10 years, whatever it is that makes sense for you. As a recruiter, I have never come across a situation where I feel like, gosh, that person really should have put every single position they've ever held on their resume. I want to know, what have you been doing? What is relevant to this position that you're applying for? And then everything else, I'm going to find out, like Alex said earlier, I'm going to find out when we talk to each other on the phone, via Zoom, in person, whatever the interview format is. So I don't have a hard and fast rule for those, but just know that when your resume is viewed, the person who is viewing it has very little time on their hands. They're not going to read through everything else, every single thing you post. And so just keeping it down to 1 to 2 pages max is really a good idea.
I would agree with Kelly. I think 1 to 2 pages. I also think level of position you're applying for helps dictate that, right? Your first job's out of college, you're probably going to have a shorter resume. As you progress in your career, you are going to want to highlight certain key achievements or things that you've done that may make your resume a little longer. My big thing for resumes, though, is tailor it to the job you're applying for. Like Alex had mentioned earlier, those keywords, right? Maybe you've worked at Target while you were in college and now you want to go and work in the HR department. What did you learn while you were at Target that's going to correspond to what you want to do in HR? So communication, right? You talk to people all day long. Accuracy, detail orientedness, those kind of things. So really tailor what you did at your job to what job you're applying for. And then as for Kelly's point about 10 years, I agree. Don't put stuff back there that doesn't have relevance. Don't put, if you've been in the workforce for 25 years, is what you did 25 years ago still relevant to what you did today? Myself, for example, I was a Kmart employee for 3 years in high school, you guys, but it's not on my resume anymore. So I think tailor it and use it as a tool. Again, it's a tool to sell yourself.
To add to that, I mean, all I could really say is this, guys. I mean, again, it's going to depend on the individual recruiter. There are some people that want to know how to build a clock, and then there's some people that just want to know what time it is, right? For me personally, my preference is just something easy on the eyes that I don't have to, really search too hard to find what I'm really looking for. I would tell you too, think about it like a school paper, right? You got to look at it like I don't want to read the book. I want the table of contents. I want to know that what this book's about in a couple of words, and I want to be able to skim through this very, very fast just to make sure you meet the qualifications. You do great. Now let me dive into this and let me see if I can draw some parallels. Let me see if there's some big gaps between employment. And then if I decide to give you a call, I would also have to tell you, know your resume, know how to speak to it, know how to sell it. Know how to explain the things that are questionable, like the big gaps, or the constant moving around from company to company. Again, I want to make sure that you're running to us, not running from something, right? So take the time to polish it up and tailor it to me. Okay, that's it. think you're muted there, Michael. Can't
Thank you. That is a weakness of mine. I kind of jumped the gun. So we do have about 5 minutes left, and we do have a lot of amazing questions. However, we're not going to be able to get to them all. So I do think we have time for one last question. And I think that this is an interesting one, especially given kind of the circumstances now. And I think could be applied to a lot of people. How do you explain in the interview process kind of how you separate from a company? So it's a little bit long-winded, but hopefully I'll summarize it well. Somebody says they were furloughed by the hospital that they worked back in April 2020 due to COVID. Then they were brought back to the team. However, the team was not following proper COVID-19 precautions, mask wearing, etc. And the commute to work had me coming back went from 15 minutes to an hour. And so they ended up resigning due to the following two issues. And they're currently being recruited by another hospital. And they're wanting to know what's the best way of going about explaining being furloughed, then coming back, and then resigning due to the lack of follow through with compliance. How do you navigate those kind of tricky conversations when you are seeking employment, and so you don't put yourself out?
I think I will take a reverse approach on this. I think number one, if you have an explanation when I ask you the question, and it's an explanation that's reasonable, then check, that's reasonable, right? But I would also caution you on the following, because my follow-up question would probably be, was everyone furloughed or just you? Does everyone live far away or just you? So I get it. You want something that's right across the street. Well, you know what? In our job, nothing's easy. So if it's not this, it's going to be that. So be very cautious with that, right? I would just say it's very easily explainable right now in this environment that COVID is a concern, and if you feel if you have fear for your own safety and your own health and what you were bringing home every single day, that's one thing. Another thing is how you explain the distance piece, because let me tell you, in Houston, I don't care how far away you live from something, everything is 45 minutes. So that's all I could really tell you is be careful, because your birds can bounce back to hurt you.
I think that's a really smart point to bring up, Alex, because anything in an interview that's said, as recruiters, we're screening, right? We're saying, hey, what does that mean? Tell us more about it. What was your reaction? Was it just you? Was it the company? Why did you make that choice? And we're trying to figure out you sitting across from us, right? And what your path has been to get you to our door today. And so, I would say never lie, be honest, because here's the thing about reference checking. Your employer may only give dates and position, right? But we know people in the community and people talk. So you want to make sure you're being honest and upfront with your answer. But I would also say do a little bit of self-reflection and really find out what was your reason for leaving and what do you want next? Because I think if you can explain, hey, here's what happened, right? It's COVID. It's a weird time. I want to make sure I'm safe. Here's why I made my decision. Here's what I'm looking for. And when I look at your website or when I've been in your hospital system or when I've interacted with your employees, I see this, this, and this demonstrated, and that's what I want. That helps kind of paint the picture from here to the decision to the why you're at my door today.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. I know we're running up short on time. I think those are both really solid answers. There's a quote that someone told me once that has helped me tremendously, being in the interviewee seat versus the interviewer. And that is, you don't have to answer questions that haven't been asked of you. I know my job as an interviewer is to ask the right questions. If I haven't asked you about all the intricate details about why you left, then go ahead and start with, I was furloughed due to COVID-19, and then go into what Nicole recommended of here's what I'm looking for, here's what I want, here's how your company provides that, so that you're not lying to the company by any means, but you don't have to give every single detail. And if I want more, I'm going to ask more.
That's right.
Awesome. Wonderful advice. Spot on. We are at time. So I really want to thank our three wonderful alum, Alex, Nicole, and Kelly. I'm sure that they'd be willing to connect with you if you find them on LinkedIn. And you see their names there. They've been there the entire panel, so I'm sure you can find them pretty easily on LinkedIn. And since we have kind of a captured audience here, I will mention and make a plug for next week. We have our first virtual business career fair. And Kelly giving the thumbs up because Kelly and Allworth Financial will be there. So if you're in the California area and you're interested in opportunities, be sure to sign up for a session with Allworth. And you can find that by logging into wgu.join-handshake and doing a filter in events for virtual or career fair and registering and signing up. Thank you again to three of you for your time and expertise and willing to come back and connect with fellow night owls. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful night. Take care.
Thanks.
All right, guys. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.